Hey, welcome back. Today I'm sharing the story of us moving down from Connecticut. Tom and I were both raised in Georgia. I was raised in Atlanta and he was raised outside of Atlanta. And so we dated for 7 years, then we got married, and long story short, we ended up in Connecticut for 11 years. We were both going to graduate school up there, and we got married, and we ended up with 3 children, having our first 3 children up there. Okay, and this is where I'm going to start telling the story of how we came down to Atlanta. We didn't know when we were supposed to come back, but we knew that we were supposed to come back. So we were always kind of wondering, when are we going to go back? And so I believe this was the winter of 94, and I think there were 17 snowstorms that winter. And so we were really having trouble. And I had 3 babies in snowsuits trying to go everywhere in the snow. And you know how many feet it was. It was a lot of snow. But I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn. And anyway, so I had been feeling this kind of angst, like, I don't know, maybe it's time. And I hadn't really talked about it with him, but one day he came home from work, and the first thing he said after he closed the door is he said, "Why are we still here? Why are we here?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been wondering the same thing." Because we didn't really have any help. We had our church friends that would come over every now and then, but we really missed our family and our connections in Georgia. So I said, "Yeah, I've been wondering the same thing too." And he said, "Why don't you give Gigi a call?" Gigi was my grandmother, who was used to live on this property that we live now. And he said, "Why don't you give Gigi a call and see if that woman renting that house, see when her lease is up." So I said, "Okay." So the next day, I called my grandmother and I said, "Gigi, is that woman that was renting your house still there?" Because my grandmother used to live on this lot where we live now, and then she bought another house across the street, moved into that one, and then rented the one that was here. And so I was asking is her if the house that was still here then was still being rented. And so she said, "Yes, she's still there renting it." And I said, "Well, when does she move out?" And my grandmother said she'll be moving out January 1st. And so we thought, wow. And I said, "Well, Gigi, is there any way if we came down to Atlanta, would we be able to live in that house and pay you rent?" And she said, "Sure, darling, come on down." So we said, okay. So the next day we agreed to put the house on the market. But there were 3 ways that we wanted the Lord to speak to us to give a clear confirmation that this is what He wanted us to do. So we said, okay, we'll put the house on the market and we'll let you speak to us, and we would prefer that it be very clear, please, how long it takes to get an offer, what the offer is, and who the person is that makes the offer. So just to let you know, in 2 weeks, we had a full offer from a pastor. So we said, yes, sir. And we got our moving truck, and the house sold beautifully. Everything went smoothly. And we had 2 huge trucks, and we moved everything in that house down to Georgia. So that's just a testimony of what the Lord did for us. When we wanted to move, we kind of thought it might be time, but we weren't sure, but we wanted His direction and confirmation, and He made it very clear. And so here we are, living on that lot. And then later, we had rented the house from my grandmother for 2 years, and what happened was we didn't know if we should move outside the city where things weren't so expensive at that time. But I kept reading this verse in Psalms that said, "He who abides in me will inherit the land." And he kept telling me this, showing me that verse and just speaking so loudly. And I was like, "He who abides in me will inherit the land. What are you talking about?" And I was like, I had no idea what he was saying. And so then, about 6 months later, my grandmother comes to us and tells us that she wants to deed us the property, basically. So she deeded us the property. I forget if it was $100 or $1,000 or something like that. But she ended up giving us the property. So we're living on that land now. And we ended up tearing down, demoing the old house that was here that had a lot of issues, and we built a new house. Okay. Oh, and then after that, we didn't really have enough furniture to fill up the house. It's like 3,500 square feet. And so we said, okay, Lord, you've given us this land. We've built this house. We need furniture. How are we going to do this? What do you want? How do you want to work this? Because we could have gone and just bought all the furniture, but we just wanted to make sure that he didn't have something better. So we waited a little while. I don't know how many days it was after that, but my mom told me she used to deal with antiques, French country and English country antiques, and she would travel to the French countryside and different places and spend a month there collecting, furniture that she wanted to sell, and she would have it shipped over and she would sell it here. Well, at one point she was consolidating two of her locations where she was selling. She had a booth somewhere and a booth somewhere else, and she was going to consolidate them into one booth. And so she came over one day and said, I'm closing this one booth and I'm bringing everything over to this other place, and whatever's left over, I'm bringing to your house. So anyway, that's where we got our furniture. We have a lot of French country and English country antiques, which I was raised with and I'm perfectly comfortable with. So that is what our house is filled with. So the Lord has provided very much for us, but we had to wait. We had to ask Him. We had to trust Him. And we had to have confident expectation that He's going to be the God that He is. And we tried to stay out of the way. We don't always do that, but in those instances, we definitely stayed out of the way, and He really provided for us. So I'm just supposed to share this today to encourage all of you to trust the Lord, to know that He's real. He cares about you. He wants to provide for you. He wants to show you who He really is, and that everything that He says about Himself is completely true. But you've got to give Him room to do that. If you're in the way, you're kind of blocking Him. He's saying, okay, you got this? Well, go ahead. Let's see what you can do. He doesn't usually barge in. He's a gentleman, and He will let you kind of run things and keep hitting your head up against a brick wall, stressing out until you say, okay, I'm done. Would you please run my life? That's what He's wanting from us, is to be able to fill us up and to run our lives, because He's a good God and He knows exactly what He's doing. Okay, I hope this is helpful for somebody out there, and I'll see you soon.